Charlotte's hands blaze with forbidden light as she faces the vampire who wants her dead. Vivian's fangs descend toward her throat while Nathaniel is trapped 3 floors away. One wrong move and the servant she's protecting will become collateral damage. The cruel vampire king's human housekeeper has exactly 3 seconds to prove she's more than prey. Before we dive in, comment where in the world you are watching from and don't forget to click subscribe. The mansion loomed at the end of Thornwood Lane like a beast carved from shadow and stone. 3 stories of Gothic architecture twisted against the storm-dark sky, its windows black and vacant as the eyes of the dead. Rain hammered the cobblestones as Charlotte Hayes clutched the crumpled job advertisement in her trembling hand, reading it for the 100th time. Live-in housekeeper needed, room and board provided, salary negotiable, no references required. Contact Lord Nathaniel Blackwood. Nobody in town would take this job. The whispers followed her through the market that morning as she'd asked about the position. Don't go near Blackwood Manor. He's dangerous, cruel. The last 3 housekeepers fled in the night, refusing to speak of what they'd seen. But Charlotte had exactly $47 to her name, an eviction notice taped to her apartment door, and a younger sister whose medication cost more than Charlotte made in a month. Dangerous and cruel she could handle. Starvation she could not. She knocked. The sound echoed through the rain like a gunshot. For a long moment, nothing. Then the door swung inward with a groan that seemed to come from the house's bones. A man stood in the shadows of the entrance hall, tall enough that Charlotte had to tilt her head back to see his face. When she did, her breath caught in her throat. Lord Nathaniel Blackwood was beautiful in the way winter storms were beautiful, all sharp edges and lethal grace. His hair fell to his shoulders in waves of pure black, framing a face that belonged in Renaissance paintings. High cheekbones, a jaw carved from marble, lips that looked cruel even in repose. But it was his eyes that made Charlotte's stomach drop. They were the color of mercury, pale silver that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. And they were currently fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel like prey. You're here about the position. His voice was deep, cultured, with an accent that suggested old money and older bloodlines. Not a question. Charlotte forced her spine straight, refusing to show fear. I am Charlotte Hayes. I saw your advertisement. One dark eyebrow arched. And the warnings didn't deter you? How refreshing. He stepped aside, gesturing for her to enter. Most flee before they reached the door. The entrance hall was cavernous, lit by candles that floated in the air without visible support. Charlotte's eyes widened, but she swallowed her shock. Marble floors stretched toward a grand staircase that split in 2 directions, ascending into shadows. Paintings lined the walls, portraits of stern-faced individuals who all shared those same unsettling silver eyes. I need the work, Charlotte said simply. Whatever you are, whatever this place is, I can handle it. Nathaniel circled her slowly, studying her like a cat studying a mouse. She could feel his gaze traveling over her rain-soaked clothes, her worn shoes, the defiant tilt of her chin. Can you? This house has specific needs, specific rules. Break them and you won't get a second warning. Name them. His lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it held any warmth. 1. You never enter the east wing after sunset. 2. You do not question what you see or hear in this house. 3. He leaned closer, close enough that she could smell him, winter forests and something darker, older. You never, ever try to leave without my permission. Charlotte's heart hammered against her ribs, but she met his mercury eyes without flinching. And if I agree to these terms, then you will be compensated generously. More than you could earn in a year elsewhere. You'll have your own quarters, access to the library, and meals provided. But understand this, Miss Hayes. He stepped even closer, invading her space with predatory confidence. You belong to me, The moment you accept. Your time, your obedience, your presence in this house, all of it becomes mine. The words should have terrified her. Instead, a strange heat unfurled low in Charlotte's belly, something electric and dangerous that she'd never felt before. She thought of her sister's medication, of the eviction notice, of the empty refrigerator in her apartment. She thought of how tired she was of being powerless. I accept. Nathaniel's smile grew sharp enough to cut. Excellent. Follow me. He led her through corridors that seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them, past rooms filled with furniture draped in white sheets like ghosts. The house was massive, far larger than it appeared from the outside, and impossibly quiet. No sounds of servants, no ticking clocks, just the whisper of their footsteps on ancient floors. Your quarters. Nathaniel opened a door to reveal a bedroom that stole Charlotte's breath. It was larger than her entire apartment, with a canopy bed draped in midnight blue silk, a fireplace already crackling with flames, and windows that overlooked gardens she could barely make out in the darkness. A wardrobe stood open, revealing clothes in her exact size. How did you? Charlotte started. I knew you would come, Nathaniel said simply. I've been waiting for you. Before she could process that unsettling statement, he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Charlotte stood alone in the luxurious room, listening to the rain hammer the windows, and wondered what she'd just agreed to. The first 3 days passed in a blur of impossible tasks. Charlotte cleaned rooms that seemed to dirty themselves overnight, polished, silver that tarnished as soon as she looked away, and tried not to think about the sounds she heard from the east wing after dark. Low moans, breaking glass. Once, a scream that cut off too suddenly. She never saw Nathaniel during daylight hours. He appeared only after sunset, always perfectly dressed in dark suits that emphasized his lean, powerful frame. Sometimes she'd find him in the library, reading books so old they might crumble at a touch. Other times he'd materialize behind her as she worked, close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from his body. You missed a spot, he'd murmur, his breath ghosting against her neck as he pointed to some invisible imperfection. Try again. Charlotte learned quickly that Lord Nathaniel Blackwood demanded perfection. A wrinkle in a tablecloth earned her a sharp reprimand. Dust on a banister brought him to her side, his silver eyes cold with displeasure. But she also learned that he never raised his voice, never struck her, and never threatened. His cruelty was more refined than that, delivered in icy tones and disappointed looks that somehow cut deeper than any blow. On the 4th night, she found him in the dining room, sitting at the head of a table set for 2. He gestured to the chair opposite him. Sit. Eat. I already ate, Charlotte lied. She'd been rationing her meals, uncomfortable with accepting too much. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed. I can hear your stomach growling from here, Miss Hayes. Sit. Now. The command in his voice left no room for argument. Charlotte sat. The food materialized on the table between them, course after course of dishes she couldn't name, but that smelled divine. She ate in silence while Nathaniel watched, never touching his own plate. You don't eat? She finally asked. Not this kind of food, he said. His gaze traveled over her face, lingering on her mouth. I have different tastes. The way he said it made heat coil in her belly. Charlotte set down her fork, suddenly unable to swallow. What are you? Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, a predator lounging. What do you think I am, Charlotte? The use of her first name sent a shiver down her spine. She thought of the floating candles, the impossible architecture, his too perfect face and silver eyes that glowed in the dark. Vampire. Very good. His smile revealed teeth that were slightly too sharp. And yet you stay. I made a deal. So you did. He stood, moving around the table with that inhuman grace. And I always honor my deals, You've worked hard these past days. You deserve a reward." Before Charlotte could protest, he was behind her chair, his cold hands coming to rest on her shoulders. She should have pulled away. Should have run. Instead, she froze as his fingers began to knead the knots in her muscles, working with surprising gentleness. "You're tense," Nathaniel murmured. "Always so rigid, so controlled. Don't you ever let yourself feel, Charlotte?" His hands moved lower, sliding down her arms, leaving trails of cold fire in their wake. Charlotte's breath hitched. This was dangerous. Wrong. She was his employee, nothing more. But when he leaned down, his lips brushing the shell of her ear, she couldn't find the will to move. "I can hear your heart racing," he whispered. "Can smell the heat rising in your blood. You're afraid of me, but that's not the only thing you're feeling, is it?" Charlotte turned her head sharply, meeting his eyes. They were inches apart now, close enough that she could see the flecks of silver and white in his irises, like mercury swirling in glass. "Stop." Nathaniel pulled back immediately, his hands leaving her shoulders. "As you wish." His voice was perfectly controlled, but something flickered in his expression. Disappointment? Hunger? Get some rest. Tomorrow you'll begin your real work. What does that mean? But he was already gone, leaving Charlotte alone in the dining room with half-eaten food and a pulse that wouldn't slow. She touched her shoulders where his hands had been and found them still cold, as if his touch had left frost on her skin. That night, Charlotte dreamed of silver eyes and hands that promised pleasure wrapped in danger. The real work began on the 5th day. Nathaniel led Charlotte to a room she hadn't seen before, deep in the heart of the mansion. Inside, the air was thick with candle smoke and something else, something that made her skin prickle with awareness. Books lined every wall, but these weren't normal books. They pulsed with faint light, their pages whispering secrets in languages she didn't understand. "I need you to organize these," Nathaniel said, gesturing to the chaos. "They must be sorted by type, by age, by power. It will take weeks, perhaps months, but you'll do it." "What are they?" "Grimoires, spellbooks, the collected knowledge of centuries." He traced one finger along a spine, and the book shuddered. "Some of them are dangerous. If you read the wrong passage, you could lose your mind, your soul, or both." Charlotte swallowed hard. "And you want me to organize them?" "I want you to learn them," Nathaniel corrected. His silver eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "You're more than you appear, Charlotte Hayes. I felt it the moment you knocked on my door. There's magic in your blood, untapped and wild. These books will teach you to control it." "I'm not magical. I'm just human." Nathaniel's laugh was dark, rich, like aged wine. "So was I once." He moved closer, backing her against the bookshelf. The grimoires hummed around them, responding to his proximity. "Magic doesn't care what you were, only what you're becoming. And you, Charlotte, are becoming something extraordinary." His hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb brushing her lower lip. She should have pulled away, should have reminded him of boundaries, of employer and employee, of danger. Instead, she leaned into his touch, drawn by the cold fire of his skin against hers. "Every time you walk these halls," Nathaniel continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, "every time you clean a room or dust a shelf, you're absorbing power. This house is soaked in magic, and it's seeping into your bones, your blood, your very essence." Charlotte's breath came faster. "Is that why you hired me? To turn me into something?" "I hired you because you knocked on my door when everyone else ran." His thumb traced her jaw, leaving frost in its wake. "I hired you because you looked at me without fear. I hired you because—" He paused, something raw flickering in his silver eyes. "Because I've been alone for 200 years, and the moment I saw you, I knew my isolation was over. The confession hung between them like a held breath. Charlotte's hands came up, resting against his chest. Even through his shirt she could feel how cold he was, could feel the complete absence of a heartbeat. He was dead and alive all at once, a contradiction that should have repulsed her but instead drew her closer. "Nathaniel," she whispered. "Say it again." "What?" "My name. Say it like you mean it." Charlotte's fingers curled into his shirt. "Nathaniel." He made a sound low in his throat, somewhere between a groan and a growl. Then his mouth was on hers, claiming her with a hunger that stole every thought from her mind. His lips were cold, but the kiss burned, igniting something in her blood that she'd never known existed. One hand tangled in her hair, angling her head for deeper access, while the other slid down her spine, pressing her body against his. Charlotte gasped against his mouth, and Nathaniel took advantage, his tongue sliding against hers in a dance that was both foreign and familiar. She'd been kissed before, quick pecks from boys who didn't know what they were doing. But this was different. This was being consumed, claimed, marked. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard, though only one of them needed air. Nathaniel's eyes had darkened to the color of smoke, his pupils dilated with want. His thumb brushed her swollen lips, and Charlotte saw his fangs, longer now, sharper, pressing against his lower lip. "I should stop," he said, but his hands didn't release her. "This is wrong. You're my employee. Human. Fragile." "I'm not fragile." Charlotte's voice was stronger than she felt. "And I'm not afraid of you." "You should be." Nathaniel's hand slid to her throat, not squeezing, just resting there, his thumb finding her racing pulse. "I could hurt you so easily, could drain you dry and leave you as empty as this house has been for decades. But you won't." "How do you know?" "Because..." Charlotte reached up, her fingers threading through his dark hair, pulling him down until their foreheads touched. "If you wanted to hurt me, you would have done it already. You're not cruel, Nathaniel. You're lonely. There's a difference." Something broke in his expression. The careful control he maintained shattered, and suddenly he was kissing her again, harder this time, desperate. His hands roamed her body, memorizing every curve through her clothes. Charlotte arched into him, craving more of his cold touch, more of this aching need that made her feel alive for the first time in years. Nathaniel lifted her as if she weighed nothing, setting her on the desk. Books scattered to the floor, their pages fluttering in protest, but neither of them cared. He stepped between her thighs, pressing the hard length of his arousal against her core through their clothes. Charlotte whimpered, her hands scrabbling at his shirt, desperate to feel his skin. The first button popped free, then the second. Charlotte's fingers trembled as she revealed his chest, pale and perfect as carved marble. No scars, no imperfections, just smooth skin stretched over lean muscle. She leaned forward, pressing her lips to his collarbone, and heard him groan. "Charlotte, my name was a prayer and a warning. If we don't stop now, I won't be able to. Do you understand? Once I claim you, there's no going back. You'll be mine in every way that matters." Charlotte pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "Then claim me." The words seemed to break something fundamental in Nathaniel. His control, so carefully maintained, shattered completely. He kissed her with bruising intensity, one hand fisting in her hair while the other slid up her thigh, pushing her skirt higher. Charlotte's head fell back, giving him access to her throat, and she felt his lips trace the line of her pulse, his fangs grazing her skin but not breaking it. "Not yet." "So perfect," Nathaniel murmured against her neck. "So warm. So alive. Do you have any idea how long I've waited for someone like you?" His hand reached the apex of her thighs, fingers brushing against the damp fabric of her undergarments. Charlotte gasped, her hips bucking involuntarily into his touch. Nathaniel's dark chuckle vibrated against her throat. Already soaked for me, and I've barely touched you. His fingers slipped beneath the fabric, finding her slick heat. Charlotte cried out, the sensation overwhelming. Tell me what you want, Charlotte. I need to hear you say it. You. The word came out as a broken moan. I want you, Nathaniel. Please. His fingers circled her sensitive pearl, building pressure with maddening precision. Charlotte's nails dug into his shoulders, her body trembling as pleasure coiled tighter and tighter in her core. She was climbing, right on the edge of something enormous. Then the door burst open. Charlotte and Nathaniel sprang apart, both turning toward the intruder. A woman stood in the doorway, tall and ethereal with platinum hair and eyes the color of blood. She wore a gown that looked like it belonged in a different century, and her smile was sharp enough to cut. Nathaniel, the woman purred, her voice like silk over steel. I see you've found a new plaything. How delightful. Nathaniel's entire demeanor changed. The passionate lover disappeared, replaced by something cold and dangerous. Body positioned itself between Charlotte and the woman, protective and lethal all at once. Vivienne, what are you doing here? The woman, Vivienne, laughed. It had been too long since I visited my dear brother. Besides, she stepped into the room, her red eyes fixed on Charlotte with predatory interest. I heard you'd taken in a human. I had to see for myself if the rumors were true. Charlotte's mind reeled. Brother? She looked between them, seeing the resemblance now in the sharp cheekbones, the aristocratic features. But Vivienne's eyes were red where Nathaniel's were silver, and something about her felt wrong in a way Nathaniel never had. Dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with desire and everything to do with death. Leave. Nathaniel's voice was pure command. Now. But I've only just arrived. Vivienne circled them like a shark. And your little human looks so delicious. What's your name, sweet thing? Don't answer her, Nathaniel growled. Charlotte felt power gathering in the room, making the air thick and hard to breathe. The grimoires on the shelves began to glow brighter, responding to the tension. She could sense the magic Nathaniel had spoken of, could feel it thrumming through her veins, building with her racing heartbeat. Charlotte Hayes, she said clearly, meeting Vivienne's red gaze without flinching. And I'm not a plaything. Vivienne's smile widened. Oh, she has spirit. How refreshing. Tell me, Charlotte Hayes, what has my brother promised you? Eternal life? Power beyond imagining? Or just good wages and a warm bed? She gets truth, Nathaniel said. Something you know nothing about. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in an instant. Vivienne's pleasant expression vanished, replaced by something ancient and terrible. Careful, brother. You may be master of this house, but I am still your elder. I could crush your little human like an insect. Touch her. Nathaniel's voice carried a threat that made Charlotte's blood run cold, and there won't be enough left of you to scatter in the wind. For a long moment, neither vampire moved. The air crackled with power, with barely restrained violence. Then Vivienne laughed, the sound breaking the tension like shattering glass. Very well, I'll leave your pet alone. For now. But mark my words, Nathaniel, this will end in heartbreak. They always do. She was gone in a blur of movement, leaving only the faint scent of roses and decay behind her. Nathaniel turned to Charlotte immediately, his hands coming up to frame her face. Are you all right? Did she hurt you? I'm fine. Charlotte's voice shook slightly. Who was that really? My sister. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. And someone you should avoid at all costs. Vivienne plays games with lives, Charlotte. She'll use you to get to me if she can. Why does she hate you? She doesn't hate me. She hates what I represent. Control. Restraint. Vivienne feeds indiscriminately, kills for pleasure. Everything vampires shouldn't be. He pulled Charlotte against his chest, holding her tightly. 2 centuries ago, I tried to stop her. She's never forgiven me. Charlotte felt his tension, the fear he was trying to hide. Is she dangerous? Incredibly, his arms tightened around her. Which is why you're going to stay close to me from now on. No more working alone. No more wandering the house after dark. Until I know what she wants, you don't leave my sight. The possessiveness in his voice should have alarmed her. Instead, Charlotte felt that same heat unfurling in her belly, the same need that had consumed her before Vivian's interruption. She pulled back just enough to see his face. Nathaniel, what were we doing before she arrived? His eyes darkened with renewed hunger. Something foolish. Dangerous. He cupped her cheek. Something I can't take back if we continue. Then don't take it back. Charlotte rose on her toes, her lips brushing his. Claim me. Make me yours. Whatever Vivian wants, whatever danger is coming, I choose this. I choose you. Nathaniel groaned, the sound raw and needy. Charlotte, you don't know what you're asking. Yes, she whispered against his mouth. I do. This time when he kissed her, there was no hesitation, no holding back. Nathaniel claimed her mouth with savage intensity, his hands everywhere at once, pulling at her clothes with shaking fingers. Charlotte matched his desperation, tugging his shirt free, running her hands over the cold perfection of his chest. Bed, Nathaniel managed between kisses. Not here. Not like this. You deserve better. He swept her into his arms, carrying her through the maze of corridors with impossible speed. Charlotte clung to him, her face buried in his neck, breathing in his scent of winter and darkness. They passed through rooms she'd never seen before, upstairs that spiraled into shadow, until finally Nathaniel kicked open a door. His bedroom was enormous, dominated by a bed that could have fit 6 people comfortably. Dark curtains blocked out any light, and candles ignited themselves as they entered, bathing everything in golden glow. Nathaniel laid Charlotte on the black silk sheets with surprising gentleness, his silver eyes roaming over her like a physical touch. Last chance, he said hoarsely. Once I start, I won't be able to stop. I'll need all of you, Charlotte. Body, blood, soul. Tell me now if that's too much. Charlotte reached for him, pulling him down onto the bed. It's not enough. The last thread of Nathaniel's control snapped. He descended on her like a storm, his mouth claiming hers while his hands made quick work of her remaining clothes. Each piece of fabric that fell away revealed more of her pale skin to his hungry gaze. When she lay bare beneath him, Nathaniel pulled back to look at her, and Charlotte saw wonder in his expression. Beautiful, he breathed. So utterly beautiful. His fingers traced patterns on her skin, following the curve of her breasts, the dip of her waist, the swell of her hips. I want to memorize every inch of you. Want to know what makes you gasp, what makes you moan, what makes you scream my name. Then find out. Charlotte arched beneath him, desperate for more contact. Please, Nathaniel. I know what you need. His voice was dark promise. And I'm going to give it to you. All of it. His mouth descended to her throat, lips and tongue tracing her pulse point. Charlotte's hands fisted in his hair, holding him there, silently begging for the bite she knew was coming. But Nathaniel took his time, kissing his way down her collarbone, across the swell of her breast, until his mouth closed around her hardened peak. Charlotte cried out, her back bowing off the bed. The sensation was overwhelming, cold and heat all at once, pleasure so intense it bordered on pain. Nathaniel's tongue circled and flicked, his fangs grazing sensitive flesh without breaking skin. When he moved to her other breast, giving it the same devoted attention, Charlotte thought she might shatter from sensation alone. Nathaniel, please. She didn't know what she was begging for, only that she needed more, needed everything. His hand slid between her thighs, fingers finding her slick and ready. Charlotte's hips bucked as he circled her pearl, building pleasure with practiced skill. When he slid one finger inside her, testing her readiness, she nearly came apart right there. So tight, Nathaniel groaned against her skin. So perfect. I'm going to take my time with you, Charlotte. Going to make you come undone again and again until you forget your own name. True to his word, Nathaniel worked her body like an instrument, learning every note that made her sing. His fingers moved in slow, deliberate strokes, curling to find that spot deep inside that made stars burst behind her eyes. His thumb circled her sensitive pearl with maddening precision, building pressure until Charlotte was writhing beneath him, desperate for release. That's it, Nathaniel murmured, his voice rough with desire. Let go for me. Show me how beautiful you are when you fall apart. His thumb pressed down hard just as his fingers curved inside her, and Charlotte shattered. Pleasure crashed over her in waves, her body convulsing as she cried out his name. Nathaniel didn't stop, working her through every aftershock until she collapsed boneless against the sheets, trembling and gasping. Beautiful, Nathaniel's eyes were molten silver as he looked at her. But we're far from done. He shed his remaining clothes with inhuman speed, and Charlotte's breath caught at the sight of him. His body was perfect, all lean muscle and pale skin, and his arousal stood proud and thick, the tip already glistening with need. He was intimidating in size, but Charlotte felt no fear, only want. Nathaniel positioned himself between her thighs, the hard length of him pressing against her entrance. I'll go slow, he promised, his voice strained with the effort of holding back. Tell me if it hurts. He pushed inside with aching gentleness, inch by inch, giving her body time to adjust to his size. Charlotte felt herself stretching, accommodating him, the sensation overwhelming and perfect all at once. When he was fully seated inside her, they both froze, panting, overwhelmed by the connection. Charlotte, Nathaniel's eyes burned into hers. You feel like heaven. Then he began to move. Slow, deep thrusts that had Charlotte clinging to his shoulders, her nails digging crescents into his cold skin. Each stroke hit that perfect spot inside her, building pleasure all over again. Nathaniel's control was exquisite torture, every movement calculated to drive her higher. Harder, Charlotte gasped. Please, Nathaniel, I need. His restraint shattered. Nathaniel's hips snapped forward with supernatural strength, driving into her with a desperation that matched her own. The bed frame creaked under the force of his thrusts, and Charlotte wrapped her legs around his waist, taking him deeper, kneading him closer. Mine, Nathaniel growled, his fangs fully extended now, his eyes glowing with inhuman light. Say it, Charlotte. Say you're mine. Yours, she gasped, pleasure coiling tighter and tighter. I'm yours, Nathaniel. Only yours. His mouth descended to her throat, fangs grazing her pulse. The moment his teeth pierced her skin, Charlotte's world exploded. The bite was pleasure and pain intertwined, intimacy beyond anything she'd ever imagined. She could feel Nathaniel inside her, around her, drinking from her, claiming every part of her all at once. Her second climax hit like lightning, more intense than the first, stealing her breath and her sanity. She felt Nathaniel follow her over the edge, his body going rigid as he spilled inside her, his moan vibrating against her throat. For a moment that stretched into eternity, they were one being, one heart, one soul. When the world finally stopped spinning, Nathaniel carefully withdrew his fangs, his tongue sealing the small wounds with gentle strokes. He collapsed beside her, pulling her against his chest, both of them trembling with aftershocks. Charlotte, his voice was rough, almost broken. Are you all right? Did I hurt you? She turned in his arms, meeting his worried gaze. That was the most incredible thing I've ever experienced. Relief flooded his features. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, her cheeks, her swollen lips. You're mine now, in every way that matters. The blood bond, it's permanent. You'll always be able to feel me, sense me, know when I'm near. Good. Charlotte nestled closer, her ear pressed to his silent chest. Because I'm not going anywhere. They lay in comfortable silence, their bodies still tangled together. Outside, dawn was breaking, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Nathaniel's arms tightened around her as the sun rose higher, but he didn't pull away, didn't retreat to wherever vampires went during the day. Aren't you supposed to sleep when the sun rises? Charlotte asked. Usually, Nathaniel's fingers traced lazy patterns on her spine. But I don't want to miss a moment with you. I've spent 2 centuries sleeping through daylight. For once, I want to watch the sunrise. What changed? You changed everything. He tilted her face up, his silver eyes soft with an emotion Charlotte was afraid to name. The moment you knocked on my door, the moment you looked at me without fear, I knew my life would never be the same. Charlotte's throat tightened with feeling. I was so scared that day. Terrified. But more scared of losing my sister, of being helpless and alone. You're not alone anymore. Nathaniel kissed her softly. Neither of us is. They fell asleep as the sun climbed higher, wrapped in each other's arms. 2 souls who'd been lonely for far too long finally finding their home. When Charlotte woke, evening had fallen and Nathaniel was gone. She sat up, the silk sheets pooling around her waist, and noticed a note on the pillow beside her. Had to handle some business. Don't leave the bedroom. Vivienne is still in the house. I'll return by midnight. N. Charlotte dressed in one of the robes hanging in his closet, enormous on her frame but soft as clouds. Her body ached in the most delicious way, reminders of the previous night making her cheeks flush. She touched the small marks on her throat where Nathaniel's fangs had pierced her skin, already healed but still tender. A knock on the door made her jump. Charlotte? She opened it to find a young woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. The woman wore servant's clothes and carried a tray of food. Lord Blackwood asked me to bring you dinner, the woman said. I'm Rosalie. I work in the kitchens. Charlotte blinked in surprise. I didn't know there were other servants here. Oh, there's a whole staff. Rosalie set the tray on a table near the window. We just keep to the lower levels mostly. Lord Blackwood prefers privacy. She paused, then smiled conspiratorially. Though I have to say, the whole house is buzzing about you. About me? You're the first person in 200 years that he's allowed into his private quarters. The first person he's shown any interest in at all. Really? Rosalie's smile widened. The staff are hoping you'll make him less, well, terrifying. Charlotte laughed despite herself. I don't think anyone could make Lord Blackwood less terrifying. Maybe not, Rosalie agreed. But you make him human, or as close as someone like him can get. Her expression grew serious. Be careful, though. Lady Vivienne is asking questions about you. She stopped by the kitchens earlier, wanting to know everything about the new housekeeper. What did you tell her? Nothing. Rosalie's jaw set stubbornly. The staff are loyal to Lord Blackwood, not his sister. We know what she is. Before Charlotte could ask what that meant, a scream echoed through the house. Both women froze. It came again, high and terrified, from somewhere below. The servants' quarters. Rosalie's face went pale. Oh God, she's found them. Charlotte didn't think. She ran. Down the corridor, down the stairs, following the screams to a part of the house she'd never seen before. The servants' wing was modest compared to the rest of the mansion, but warm and lived in. Charlotte burst through a door and froze. Vivienne stood in the center of a dining hall, holding a young man by the throat. He couldn't have been more than 20, his eyes wide with terror as Vivienne's fangs extended. Around them, other servants huddled against the walls, frozen in fear. "Please," the young man gasped, "please don't." Vivienne's red eyes gleamed with pleasure. "But you smell so delicious, sweet boy. And I'm terribly hungry." "Let him go," Charlotte's voice cut through the room. Vivienne's head snapped toward her, surprise flickering across her perfect features. "The human speaks. How bold." "What will you do if I don't, little girl? You have no power here." Charlotte felt something surge inside her. The magic Nathaniel had spoken of, dormant until this moment. It rushed through her veins like liquid fire, responding to her will, her fury at seeing someone threatened. The grimoires in Nathaniel's library had whispered to her, teaching her things she didn't consciously remember learning. "I said," Charlotte's voice resonated with power she didn't know she possessed, "let him go." Light erupted from her hands, pure and blazing. It struck Vivienne like a physical blow, forcing her to release the young man. He collapsed to the floor, gasping. The other servants scattered, fleeing to safety, but Charlotte stood her ground as Vivienne straightened, fury written across her beautiful face. "You dare," the vampire hissed. "You're nothing. A weak human playing with forces you don't understand." "I understand enough." Charlotte's hands still glowed with that strange light. "I understand that Nathaniel would never forgive you if you hurt someone in his house. I understand that you're afraid of him, which is why you're going after people who can't fight back." Vivienne's smile turned deadly. "Clever little human, too clever for your own good." She moved faster than sight, suddenly inches from Charlotte, her hand wrapped around Charlotte's throat. The light in Charlotte's hands flickered and died as Vivienne's superior strength overwhelmed her amateur magic. "Let's see how clever you are when you're bleeding out." Vivienne's fangs descended toward Charlotte's throat. Then Nathaniel was there. He appeared between them like a shadow made solid, his hand closing around Vivienne's wrist with crushing force. The sound of breaking bone echoed through the hall. Vivienne shrieked, pulling back, cradling her shattered wrist. "You broke my arm!" "Touch her again." Nathaniel's voice was death itself, "and I'll break every bone in your body before I stake you to the ground and let the sunrise burn you to ash." His power filled the room, making the air thick and hard to breathe. Charlotte had never seen him like this, had never witnessed the full extent of what he was capable of. This was the vampire lord, the master of this domain, the creature who'd survived 2 centuries through strength and will. Vivienne backed away, fear finally showing in her eyes. "Brother, please. I was only playing." "You were hunting." Nathaniel advanced on her, his silver eyes blazing. "In my house, among my people. After I explicitly told you to leave, I'm family. You stopped being family when you chose murder over mercy, when you decided that power was more important than honor." Nathaniel's hand shot out, grabbing her throat, lifting her off the ground. "Leave this house, leave this city. If I ever see you again, there won't be enough left of you for the crows to feast on." He threw her. Vivienne crashed through the wall, tumbling into the hallway beyond. When she picked herself up, blood dripping from a cut on her forehead, her expression was pure hatred. "You'll regret this," she spat. "Both of you. That human has made you weak, Nathaniel, and weakness in our world means death." Then she was gone, moving with blurring speed, disappearing into the night. Nathaniel turned immediately to Charlotte, his hands gentle as they checked her for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did she harm you?" "I'm fine." Charlotte's legs trembled now that the adrenaline was fading. I saw her threatening that boy, and I couldn't." "You used magic." Nathaniel's expression was stunned. "Charlotte, that was pure defensive magic. It takes most witches years to master that kind of manifestation." "How did you do it?" "I don't know." Charlotte looked at her hands, still tingling with residual power. I just felt it inside me, and I wanted to protect him, and it just came out. Nathaniel pulled her against his chest, holding her tightly. You magnificent, terrifying woman. Do you have any idea how powerful you are? The young man Vivian had threatened approached cautiously. My lord, thank you. She would have killed me if not for. Thanks, Charlotte, Nathaniel interrupted. She's the one who saved you. The young man bowed deeply to Charlotte. Thank you, my lady. I owe you my life. Charlotte felt embarrassed by the formal gratitude. I'm not a lady. I'm just. You're mine, Nathaniel said firmly. Which makes you lady of this house. He turned to address the gathered servants who were slowly emerging from their hiding places. From this moment forward, Charlotte Hayes is under my protection. She is to be afforded the same respect and obedience you give me. Anyone who questions this will answer to me personally. A chorus of, "Yes, my lord," echoed through the hall. Later, back in Nathaniel's bedroom, Charlotte sat on the edge of the bed while he tended to the bruises Vivienne's grip had left on her throat. His touch was infinitely gentle, his expression dark with fury at the marks marring her skin. I should have killed her, he said quietly. I should have ended this centuries ago. Why didn't you? Because she's family. Nathaniel's jaw clenched. Because for all her faults, all her cruelty, she's the only blood relation I have left. Everyone else is dead. Has been for so long I can barely remember their faces. Charlotte took his hand, threading their fingers together. You're not alone anymore. You have me now. His silver eyes met hers, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. For how long, Charlotte? You're human. Even with magic, even with the blood bond, you'll age, you'll die, and I'll be alone again for another 200 years, carrying the memory of you like a wound that never heals. The words hurt, but Charlotte understood the fear behind them. Then change me, she said simply. Make me like you. Nathaniel pulled back as if she'd struck him. You don't know what you're asking? Yes, I do. I'm asking for forever with you. I'm asking for a chance to stand beside you as an equal, instead of something fragile that needs protecting. The transformation is agony. Nathaniel's voice was rough. 3 days of pain as your body dies and remakes itself. And there's no guarantee you'll survive. Some humans can't handle the change. Their bodies reject it and they simply cease. Charlotte cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. I trust you. And I choose this. Choose us. I can't lose you. Then make sure I survive. Charlotte leaned forward, her lips brushing his. Make me yours. Forever. Nathaniel kissed her with desperate intensity, his hands tangling in her hair. Not yet, he whispered against her mouth. Give me time to prepare, to make sure everything is perfect, to increase your chances of survival. How long? A week. Maybe 2. I need to gather certain ingredients, perform certain rituals, and, his voice dropped, I need time to memorize every moment with you as you are now. Just in case. Charlotte understood. Just in case she didn't survive the transformation. Just in case these were their last days together with her human. Then make them count. She pulled him down onto the bed. Show me what forever could feel like. Nathaniel's response was to worship her body with hands and mouth, learning every secret that made her gasp and moan. They made love 3 times that night, each time more intense than the last, as if they were trying to burn the memory of each other into their very souls. As dawn approached and Charlotte lay in Nathaniel's arms, sated and exhausted, she felt the blood bond thrumming between them. She could sense his emotions, his love and fear and desperate hope all tangled together. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that whatever came next, they would face it together. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation and passion, Nathaniel spent his days gathering rare herbs and ancient texts, consulting with allies Charlotte never knew existed. Apparently, the vampire world was vast and complex, with different covens and bloodlines spread across the globe. Nathaniel called in favors that were centuries old, asking for ingredients and advice on how to ensure Charlotte's survival. At night, they came together with increasing desperation. Nathaniel made love to her like a man drowning, trying to memorize every sound she made, every shiver and gasp. Charlotte matched his intensity, knowing these could be their last days like this, her body warm and soft against his cold perfection. He taught her more magic during stolen hours in the library. Charlotte proved to be a natural, her power growing stronger with each passing day. She could move objects with her mind now, could create shields of pure light, could even sense the presence of other supernatural beings before seeing them. "You're remarkable," Nathaniel told her one evening as she successfully levitated an entire shelf of grimoires. "I've never seen anyone progress this quickly." Charlotte lowered the books carefully back into place. "Maybe it's because I have a good teacher? Or maybe," Nathaniel pulled her close, "it's because you were always meant for this. Always meant to be more than human." The night before the transformation, Nathaniel took Charlotte to a part of the mansion she'd never seen before. Deep underground, accessed through a hidden door in the wine cellar, lay a chamber that took her breath away. It was beautiful in a terrible way, all black stone and silver symbols carved into every surface. In the center stood a marble altar, and around it, candles burned with that same blue flame she'd seen throughout the house. The air hummed with power, old magic that made her skin prickle. "This is where it will happen," Nathaniel explained. "The ritual must be performed in a place of power, somewhere the veil between life and death is thin enough to let you pass through and return changed." Charlotte approached the altar, running her fingers over the smooth stone. "How does it work?" "I'll drain you." Nathaniel's voice was carefully controlled. "Not all at once, but slowly, letting you drift into death. At the exact moment your heart stops, I'll cut my wrist and you'll drink from me. My blood will remake you from the inside out, transforming every cell, every atom of your being. And the pain will be unlike anything you've ever experienced." He didn't sugarcoat it. "Your body will fight the change. It will feel like burning alive and freezing to death simultaneously. You'll beg for it to stop. Beg for death. And I'll have to sit there and watch you suffer, unable to help, unable to stop it." Charlotte turned to face him. "But you'll be there? The whole time?" Every second Nathaniel's hands framed her face. "I'll hold you through it all. 3 days and 3 nights I won't leave your side." "Then I can endure it." Charlotte leaned into his touch. "As long as you're with me." They made love one last time in his bedroom, tender and slow. Nathaniel worshipped every inch of her body as if it were sacred, kissing away the tears that leaked from her eyes. Charlotte poured everything she felt into each touch, each kiss, trying to show him without words how much he meant to her. "I love you," Nathaniel whispered against her skin as they moved together. "I've loved you since the moment you knocked on my door, drenched and defiant and utterly fearless." "I love you too," Charlotte gasped as pleasure built between them. "In this life, and whatever comes after." They climaxed together, Nathaniel's fangs finding her throat as Charlotte's body clenched around him. The bond between them flared bright and hot, binding them together in ways that went deeper than blood or flesh. Afterward, as they lay tangled together, Nathaniel pressed kisses to her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "If something goes wrong," he started. Charlotte pressed her fingers to his mouth. "It won't. I trust you completely." The next evening, Charlotte descended to the ritual chamber dressed in a simple white gown Nathaniel had provided. She found him waiting beside the altar, looking more nervous than she'd ever seen him. Behind him stood 3 other vampires, ancient-looking beings with power radiating from them like heat from a forge. Witnesses, Nathaniel explained. The transformation requires them. If anything goes wrong, He couldn't finish. They'll make sure I don't become something terrible. Charlotte understood. It's all right. I'm not afraid. She climbed onto the altar, lying back against the cool stone. Nathaniel positioned himself beside her, his silver eyes searching her face one last time. Last chance to change your mind, he said softly. Charlotte took his hand, squeezing tight. Forever starts now. Nathaniel's fangs descended. He struck with precision, piercing her throat in the spot he'd claimed so many times before. But this time was different. This time, he didn't stop after a few swallows. He drank deeply, steadily, draining her life away with careful control. Charlotte felt herself growing cold, her heartbeat slowing. The world started to fade, colors leaching away until everything was gray. She could hear Nathaniel's voice from far away, murmuring words of love and encouragement, but she couldn't respond. Her body felt heavy, disconnected, floating away. Her heart stuttered, stopped, started again, stopped once more. Now, one of the witnesses said. Charlotte felt something warm and copper-tasting touch her lips. Nathaniel's blood. She tried to swallow, but her body wasn't cooperating. Nathaniel's hand cradled her head, tilting it back, forcing the blood down her throat. Drink, he commanded. Charlotte, please, drink for me. She managed one swallow, then another. The blood burned going down, but she forced herself to keep drinking. After an eternity, Nathaniel pulled his wrist away. Good girl. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. Now comes the hard part. I'm so sorry, my love. I'm so sorry. The pain hit like lightning. Every nerve in Charlotte's body ignited simultaneously, burning with a fire that came from within. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. Her back arched off the altar, muscles seizing, bones feeling like they were splintering apart and reforming. I have you. Nathaniel's arms came around her, pulling her against his chest. I'm right here. You're not alone. The pain intensified. Charlotte's fingernails raked down Nathaniel's back, drawing blood he didn't seem to feel. Time lost all meaning. There was only the burning, the agony that consumed everything else, and Nathaniel's voice in her ear, never stopping, never giving up, telling her she was strong, she was brave, she would survive this. True to his word, Nathaniel never left her side. When Charlotte's thrashing nearly threw her from the altar, he held her down with gentle force. When she wept blood tears, he wiped them away. When her screams finally found voice and echoed through the chamber, he sang to her. Old songs in languages she didn't know, but found comforting anyway. On the second day, Charlotte's human self began to die. She could feel it slipping away, all the warmth and softness that had defined her giving way to something harder, colder, more. Her senses sharpened until she could hear conversations happening 3 floors above, could smell individual heartbeats of the servants going about their duties. On the 3rd day, Charlotte Hayes died. Her heart gave one final beat, then stopped completely. Her breathing ceased. For a moment that stretched into eternity, she was simply gone. Then she opened her eyes. The world had changed. Everything was sharper, clearer, more vibrant than before. She could see individual dust motes floating in the air, could count the threads in Nathaniel's shirt. His face hovered above hers, silver eyes wide with hope and fear. Charlotte? His voice was barely a whisper. Can you hear me? She tried to speak, but her throat felt strange, unused. Finally, she managed one word. Nathaniel. Relief flooded his features. He pulled her up and into his arms, holding her so tightly she should have protested. But Charlotte found she didn't need air anymore, didn't need comfort or reassurance, because she was whole in a way she'd never been before. You did it. Nathaniel's voice broke. You survived? You're... He pulled back to look at her, and Charlotte saw wonder in his expression. You're extraordinary. Charlotte looked down at her hands and gasped. They glowed faintly with that same light she'd channeled before, but now it was constant, pulsing in time with power she could feel thrumming through her veins. When she touched Nathaniel's face, sparks of magic danced between them. What am I? Something new. One of the witnesses approached, his ancient face creased with a smile. The vampire magic combined with your innate power to create something we've never seen before. You're not just vampire, child. You're so much more. The days that followed were a revelation. Charlotte discovered she could still access her magic, but now it was amplified 1,000-fold. She could create light that burned hot enough to destroy, could shape shields that nothing could penetrate. Her physical strength matched Nathaniel's, and her speed was even greater. But it was the blood bond that truly amazed her. Now that they were the same, equals in every way, the connection between them was absolute. She could feel Nathaniel's emotions as clearly as her own, could find him anywhere in the world just by focusing on the thread that tied them together. You're perfect, Nathaniel told her on her first night as a vampire. They stood on the mansion's highest balcony, watching the stars with eyes that could count each one. I knew you would be, but seeing it, feeling you beside me like this, it's more than I ever dreamed. Charlotte turned to face him, her new vampire senses cataloging every detail of the man she loved. The way moonlight caught in his dark hair, the faint scars on his knuckles from centuries-old battles, the love in his silver eyes that matched the love flowing through their bond. Thank you, she said simply, for giving me this, for giving me forever with you. Nathaniel pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. Thank you for choosing me, for seeing past the monster to the man underneath. You were never a monster. Charlotte's fingers traced his jaw. You were just lonely. And so was I. But we're not alone anymore. They kissed as the stars wheeled overhead, two immortal beings who'd found in each other the home they'd been searching for. The mansion below them hummed with life, servants going about their duties, magic pulsing through ancient walls. Charlotte had taken a job nobody wanted at a cruel vampire king's mansion. She'd expected danger, perhaps death, certainly nothing good. Instead, she'd found love, power, purpose, and a future that stretched into eternity with the person who'd become her entire world. As Nathaniel swept her into his arms and carried her back to their bedroom, Charlotte sent a silent thank you to whatever force had led her to knock on that door weeks ago. She'd come to Blackwood Manor desperate and afraid. She was leaving her human life behind without a single regret, because what she'd gained was worth more than anything she'd lost. Forever started now, and Charlotte Hayes, who was Charlotte Blackwood now, couldn't wait to see what came next. 3 months after her transformation, Charlotte stood in the grand ballroom of Blackwood Manor, surveying the preparations for their first gathering. As the new lady of the house, she'd taken on responsibilities that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Tonight, they were hosting representatives from every major vampire coven in the region, a formal introduction of Nathaniel's mate to their society. You're nervous. Nathaniel appeared behind her, his arms sliding around her waist. I can feel it through the bond. Charlotte leaned back against his chest. What if they don't accept me? I'm so new to this world, Nathaniel. 3 months ago, I was serving coffee at a diner. 3 months ago, you were already extraordinary. Nathaniel turned her to face him. You just didn't know it yet. His hands cupped her face tenderly. Besides, if any of them dare to show you disrespect, I'll remind them exactly why they call me the cruel king. Charlotte smiled despite her nerves. You're not cruel. Not to me. Only to you does it matter. His thumb brushed her lower lip. The rest of the world can think what they like. But you, Charlotte, you see the truth of me. Just as I see the truth of you. He kissed her then, slow and deep, pouring reassurance through their bond. Charlotte melted into him, her new vampire senses cataloging everything, the taste of him, the feel of his hands sliding down her spine, the way his arousal pressed against her through their formal clothes. "Nathaniel," she breathed when they finally parted. "The guests will be arriving soon. Then we should make this quick." His smile turned wicked. His hand found the slit in her gown, fingers trailing up her thigh with deliberate slowness. "I need to remind you who you belong to before we have to share you with a room full of pompous aristocrats." Charlotte gasped as his fingers found her already slick and ready. "How did you know I wasn't wearing anything underneath?" "Because I've memorized every inch of you." Nathaniel's fingers circled her pearl with maddening precision. "Because I know that you're as desperate for me as I am for you. Because..." He slid 2 fingers inside her, making her moan. "We're bonded, my love. I can feel your desire burning through our connection." He worked her expertly, his thumb pressing against that sensitive bundle of nerves, while his fingers curled to find that perfect spot inside her. Charlotte clung to his shoulders, her head falling back as pleasure built with devastating speed. "That's it." Nathaniel's voice was dark velvet. "Let go for me. Show me how beautiful you are when you fall apart." Charlotte shattered, biting down on his shoulder to muffle her cries as waves of pleasure crashed through her. Nathaniel held her through every aftershock, his free arm supporting her trembling body. Perfect. He brought his glistening fingers to his mouth, licking them clean with a groan. "You taste like heaven and sin combined." Before Charlotte could respond, he was lifting her onto the grand piano that dominated one corner of the ballroom. His hands pushed her gown higher, exposing her completely. Charlotte tried to protest, tried to remind him that servants could walk in at any moment, but Nathaniel dropped to his knees between her thighs and all thought fled. "I've been craving this all day," he murmured against her inner thigh. "The taste of you on my tongue, the sound of you crying out my name, the feel of you coming undone because of me." His mouth descended on her center, tongue tracing through her folds with devastating skill. Charlotte's hands fisted in his dark hair, holding him there as he feasted on her like a man starved. He knew exactly how to work her, knew when to use gentle licks and when to suck hard on her pearl, knew how to build her up and drag her back from the edge until she was sobbing with need. "Please," Charlotte begged. "Nathaniel, I need." "What do you need, my love? Tell me. You. Inside me. Now." Nathaniel stood, making quick work of his trousers. When he thrust inside her in one smooth motion, they both groaned at the perfection of it. He set a punishing pace, driving into her with supernatural strength, the piano keys creating a discordant symphony with each thrust. "Mine," Nathaniel growled, his fangs extending. "Say it, Charlotte. Tell me who you belong to." "Yours," Charlotte gasped, her legs wrapping around his waist to take him deeper. "Only yours, Nathaniel. Forever yours." His fangs sank into her throat just as his hand found her pearl again. The combination of penetration, his bite, and the skilled pressure on her most sensitive spot threw Charlotte over the edge into a climax so intense she saw stars. Nathaniel followed seconds later, his own release pulsing inside her as he drank from her throat. They stayed locked together as their breathing slowed, foreheads pressed together, lost in the intimacy of the moment. Finally, Nathaniel withdrew gently, helping Charlotte down from the piano and using his supernatural speed to restore both their appearances to perfection. "Thank you." Charlotte straightened his collar, her hands lingering on his chest. "For reminding me that whatever happens tonight, we face it together." "Always together," Nathaniel promised. The gathering went better than Charlotte had dared hope. The vampire lords and ladies who arrived were curious about the unusual new vampire who commanded both traditional vampire abilities and powerful magic. Charlotte demonstrated her skills when challenged, creating shields of pure light and levitating crystal goblets with barely a thought. But it was her connection to Nathaniel that truly impressed them. The bond between them was visible to those who knew how to look, a shimmering thread of silver and gold that connected their very souls. Such bonds were rare, proof of true love that transcended the usual vampire customs of convenience and power. Lady Blackwood, an ancient vampire with kind eyes, approached Charlotte near the end of the evening. "I've known Nathaniel for 2 centuries. I've never seen him happy until tonight. Whatever you are, whatever power you possess, it pales in comparison to what you've given him. Hope, joy, a reason to embrace eternity instead of enduring it." Charlotte felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you. That means more than you know." As the last guests departed and dawn approached, Nathaniel found Charlotte on their bedroom balcony. She stood watching the sunrise, no longer fearing its light now that she was vampire. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "You were magnificent tonight," he murmured. "Every single person in that ballroom fell a little bit in love with you." "I only care about one person's love." Charlotte turned in his arms. "And I already have that." "Forever," Nathaniel agreed. "Forever." Charlotte sealed the promise with a kiss. They made love as the sun rose higher, slow and tender, reaffirming their bond with every touch. Charlotte had taken a job nobody wanted, walked into a mansion everyone feared, and found something more precious than she'd ever imagined. Love, power, purpose, and a partner who would stand beside her for all of eternity. The cruel vampire king had found his queen, and together they would build a future bright enough to rival the very sun itself. The end.